Sarah.
Melissa.
What are we doing today?
We are wrapping up 2025 reads with Adjei-Brenyah.
Sarah, these are the most glorious days of the year, in my opinion. Like the days between December 25th and December 31st. I know there's so many memes and reels and whatever about it, but I do genuinely love them. I love not knowing what day it is. I love not having any obligations. Are you just soaking up these glorious days too?
No, I really wish I could say that I am, Melissa. And, maybe as you can hear from my voice, we have been blessed, cursed with influenza this holiday season. And so as we are celebrating these days between the Christmas holiday and the New Year, I am recovering from illness and also dealing with a child that's similarly recovering from an illness that he then passed to me. So not feeling my best and brightest in these days. I'm grateful that I have them to just be in my pajamas and be resting and napping, because I definitely need that. But I really do wish that I was, even in, that book, The Hunting Party, that I read during our holiday episode. I wish I was there. I mean, murder or not. I mean, being at a big resort in the Scottish Highlands seems like it would be a lot more fun than what I'm doing right now, except talking with you.
Oh, for sure. It is true that at least while you're convalescing, the rest of the world is also just sort of on pause. Like it's not like everything is continuing on with like work and commitments and deadlines, and then you're kind of having to catch up. It's like everything is just chill, but it's probably not what you wanted to be doing during these days. I imagine there was probably more productive things or even productively relaxing type things that you wanted to be doing during these days, such as reading, for example. Perhaps some of the books that were under your tree. Did you get the books that you wanted, or were there particular books that you were after that showed up from Santa?
So in one way, I feel like I kind of dropped the ball with my Christmas requests in terms of specific titles, because I really did not ask for any books at all. So in terms of real physical books, I didn't get much. I had gotten myself a copy of A Wrinkle in Time, which I know is a relatively recent read of yours. You read it in graphic book form. I don't know if you're a Stranger Things fan, Melissa. No, not surprising at all, but and that's a compliment. It's fine. But that book is actually referenced in this final season that is being aired now from like the Thanksgiving holiday in the United States through Christmas, and then New Year's is the final episode of the series. And so A Wrinkle in Time plays a role. Even like some of the titles of episodes are named after places in that book. So I had gotten it for myself, and I did finish that. So I was able to read that. So that was good. And then I surprisingly got a book, essentially like kind of like a memoir by Lily Allen from my friend Missy, who has no stranger to this podcast, and we've talked to and talked about before. I've been obsessed with Lily Allen's recent album West End Girl, and that's actually kind of related to Stranger Things, because it's essentially about the actor David Harbour, who she was married to and who cheated on her. And so the entire album is about the dissolution of that relationship in like really gossipy, gory detail, and it is so good and so boppy. And I have been so obsessed with it that my friend Missy, because she's probably sick of me talking about Lily Allen, was like, here, just read a book that was written by her. So I did get that from her, and I wasn't expecting that. And I do look forward to reading it.
When I saw the picture that you posted of some of the books that you got for Christmas, I was like, Lily Allen as in like the singer Lily Allen? Because I wasn't sure. I mean, it is like a pretty common name that could be more than one person. And she was out of the limelight for a little while.
Yeah.
But I remember I encountered Lily Allen right when we were starting grad school. I remember I was in the process of getting like my first apartment in St. John's set up, and they had this like antenna that we hooked up to the TV. And if it was like positioned just so we could get enough signal to play the CBC like in that basement apartment. I think it only worked for like a day. And I watched I cannot remember the actual name of the show, but do you remember George Stroumboulopoulos?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I do.
I feel like the show was called something like The Hour or something like that with George Stroumboulopoulos. I think it was called the Strombo Show.
Oh,
George.
Well,
so it was definitely Strombo. Okay, hold on. George Strombolopoulos. George Stroumboulopoulos.
Oh, that sounds right.
So she was on the Strombo Show with George Stroumboulopoulos. And I was like, who is this feisty gal? Like, I really liked how she was just really like in your face. And she seemed so completely disinterested with being on the Strombo Show. Like, I'm pretty sure that she was like intoxicated because she came out for the question part with him. And he's like, you've had a couple of hits. Like, are you getting tired of playing the songs over and over? And she was like, I just get super drunk before I go on stage. And I was like, yeah, I'm getting that vibe off of you. But I remember like downloading that album and listening to it that year, but then kind of not forgetting about her, but just she was definitely in the recesses of my mind until like that new song about Madeleine came out lately.
Right. Yeah. So that is part of that West End Girl album. And I was just having a conversation with my cousin Trina about this album. You know me, I'm always pontificating about what pop culture thing I feel like people need to know about. But that particular album, if Melissa, you decide that you want to listen to it, and I do think that you would enjoy it as a whole and certainly certain songs of it. If you listen to it, for one, you have to listen to it either just you and Tom or you by yourself, because it is not safe for younger ears. You have to listen to it from front to back. You cannot just cherry pick songs. You have to listen to from track one all the way through the final track, because it's a narrative album. It's telling a story from, the first song all the way to the end. And it only really fully has the maximum impact and makes sense if you listen to all tracks in order. But there are some like really good songs. There's a song called Tennis that I think is like a bop and a half. There's a song that is 2 words. First word starts with a P, is a reference to a cat.
Okay.
A part of a woman's anatomy, a slang term. And then the second word is palace.
Okay.
That song is so good and so boppy, even though you really cannot listen to it out loud with people. But it's almost like a mantra. There's like the chorus part of that. Sometimes it's just like playing over and over and over in my head. So there are some really good songs. There's another song called Dallas Major. So boppy, so great.
I can't wait for this.
Those were my physical books. I also did get a copy of You Like It Darker, Stephen King book. My mom got it for me. It was very sweet of her. I have already read that book, so I am going to give that as a gift to somebody and spread, the Stephen King love to someone else. But the big gift that I got, and it is book related, I got from my husband, and it is a Kindle. It's a Kindle Paperwhite. I'm showing it to you on the screen right now, Melissa. And as you can see, lovely. It's a could read, should read, must read color, that beautiful teal color. Put a sticker right on my little Kindle cover. And I've already got that Kindle loaded up with a bunch of books. So I'm reading one right now. So I think I'll probably finish it before the end of the year.
How's it feeling? Does it feel book-like?
Now, I had already kind of flirted with a Kindle earlier in 2025 because my sister-in-law, Kelsey, had an extra Kindle, and she passed it on to me because her husband had used it a little bit, but not much. And it was just sitting there. And she was like, hey, if you think you might like it. And she offered to share her like Kindle Unlimited with me, which was really generous. And so I did read several books. Like I probably read at least like 6 to 10 books on the Kindle last year, her Kindle, but it was a little bit of an older model and a little bit slower. So I'm comfortable with reading it. I do like it for the convenience of like, if I'm traveling somewhere, I could have like 10 or 15 books downloaded and ready to go. So I don't run into a situation like I did a couple of years ago when I went to Florida and was sick, of course, because I'm always sick. And I never had time to actually get books. And so I finished a book the first day I was there and had no books to read for the entire vacation. So
I remember that.
Having my Kindle will prevent that from happening again. So I think my biggest reservation with having the Kindle is that it's like an Amazon product, and Jeff Bezos is like one of the certainly top 5 wealthiest people in the world, and like, what am I contributing to? And so I do kind of have, I know we might talk about this later in the episode, but I do kind of have a resolution that I think I'm going to tie to my use of the Kindle.
Oh, okay. Very nice. I was talking to someone at the Santa Claus parade, actually, because one of the things I love so much about the fact that we have this show is that people do like disclose reading related things to me. Like, people that it wouldn't have naturally come up in conversation to be like, oh, I'm reading this book, but they know I'm into books and, they know about the show and everything. So I was chatting with another mom at the Santa Claus parade, and she sort of spontaneously told me that she was reading Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Of course, we have an episode about that book, and I was like super excited because I love that book, one of my few must reads of 2025. So I was like really excited that she was sharing this with me and we were chatting about it. And she made the point that she was reading it on her Kindle. And the way that she didn't deliberately or directly say this, but the way I understood it was that like she has her Kindle books and she has her physical books in the same way that I sort of distinguish between I've got my audiobooks, that's happening in one side of my brain and in my life. But then I got my paper books, and that's happening in another area of my life. So it's almost like if she's an audiobook person too, she might have like 3 books going at the same time because she's got something in each of those corners. I don't know, maybe it's going to work out the same for you.
I think it might. I did actually start the book I'm reading on my Kindle while I was still finishing A Wrinkle in Time. So I definitely see me juggling, which I never have been a juggler before.
No.
Unless it was grad school and I had to read multiple books at once because they were assigned by classes. I'm generally like a one book at a time kind of gal, but maybe not now.
Okay, so I want to do like a little activity here. And I did give you a little bit of a heads up on this, but I don't think that much. So I can go first, obviously. Because I'm clearly well prepared for this. And I will confess this activity is inspired by the New York Times book review crowd. They were doing their pre-Christmas episode, and they were talking about gifting books and getting books as gifts and that kind of thing. And it was a really interesting conversation. I would encourage folks to check it out if they're into that kind of thing, which presumably they are if they're listening to this bookish conversation. The prompt was that the host was getting the guests to sort of describe their perfect book gift. And I don't mean like an item related to reading. Almost they were like picking all these different categories of what would make the best book ever. Of course, this made me think of like, well, what would that even be for me? Like, because a lot of times people ask the question, like, what's your favorite book? But it's not necessarily an easy question to answer because we have lots of favorite books, or there might be like elements of a book that are your favorite, but the full book itself is not your favorite. So this whole question to me was about like picking all of the elements of your favorite books and then magically like morphing them together into one book. So it was almost like if someone said like, I want to buy you a book, but don't tell me which one to get you. Just give me clues. And I was thinking that for me, I would want a book that's being talked about. Like I am not into the obscure stuff. I want to be in on it. I want something that people are excited about and that's happening right now. So something that's like acclaimed, because I want it to be talked about, but I want it to be talked about by the right people.
Yeah.
So like I'm thinking like in 2025, Intermezzo and All Fours, like they were the biggest sort of giftable book of 2025, both of which we have episodes on in case people are wondering, but like something in that realm. And I totally want a book that has like a cover designed for Instagram, which is not hard to find now. I think all the cover designers are like very much aware that the covers need to be Instagrammable. So then I was like thinking about what books those were for me. Like Good Material was very Instagrammable cover, I think last year. So something along those lines. I want fiction. I'm into a rare biography, even cookbook, something like that. But fiction's where it's at for me in terms of like getting a book. And then in terms of character, I want the character to be relatable, but to do something I would never, ever do. And Madeleine Gray's book, Green Dot. Have you started that yet?
Not yet.
Okay. You will love it. And for that matter, Rachel and the Rachel incident, I think too, like these are characters that I'm totally like, oh, I'm witty like them. They're witty like me. But then they do like crazy things that I'm like, or not even crazy things, just things that would be so out of character for me. So it's almost like, oh, I guess that's how this situation might go if I had like slept with a married man the way the character in Green Dot does. And although I am sleeping with a married man now, but he is married to me, so it's very different. But so I think that my perfect book is acclaimed literary fiction with relatable characters doing unrelatable things. That's my perfect book.
And that's a good like elevator pitch for like, hey, if you're going to buy me a book, these are the points that I want you to hit. That's great. And I feel like mine would be similar in the respect literary fiction for sure. I do dabble into memoir, especially if it has to do with like pop culture, if it has to do with like music or music history. I'm always up for that. Cameron Crowe actually has a book that he just released, which I'm like kind of kicking myself that I didn't ask for it for Christmas, because I'm like, oh, that would have been like Almost Famous is like one of my favorite movies, which is semi-autobiographical, and it's written and directed by Cameron Crowe. And so The Uncool is the name of the book. So yeah, sometimes dabbling into memoir, but literary fiction is like really my bread and butter. I would say that I love messy characters. I like a character-driven book. So we've talked about this before, vibes. I vibe on character. I don't necessarily need like a super strong plot. That I think is an important point. I like an unreliable narrator. I like to kind of be on my toes, and I want a propulsive read. I want something that is like I'm propelled through, that I don't want to put down, that I just am like compelled to turn page after page after page. So I guess those would probably be like my big ones. Messy, unreliable narrator, propulsive, vibey, character-driven literary fiction.
And I feel like that propulsive read for me, and it's different for everyone, but for me, that motor is dialogue. I want the characters interacting. And I often joke about like how I like the ensemble pieces, you know, like the Arrested Developments, or did you read French Exit by Patrick DeWitt? I don't think you have.
Nope.
Like that type of thing where everyone's so in each other's face. There's not that interiority. Like I don't really get off on that. I want them all really exchanging a lot. And that's what makes it that page turner for me, is like how they're interacting, but in that active dialogue. Who is your top messy character, either like that you encountered in 2025 specifically, or just in general? Do you have like a template that you're like, just like this person?
I might have to think about this a little bit. I mean, certainly the first person that comes to mind, this is not a 2025 read, this is a 2024 read, would be the narrator, because we never know her name, from All Fours. Like, I mean, that's a messy character. Yep. Definitely messy character. Let me just like peruse my list of books. I have it right on hand. So you read The Fake by Zoe Whittall. Really loved that. Those were messy characters, especially like the fake herself. Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. Very, very messy. And I like a character too that you're not 100% sure if you like them.
I can totally relate to that.
Like you're kind of sticking with them, even though you're kind of shaking your head and like, you know, kind of clucking your tongue at them. Like, oh, geez, like, what the hell are you doing?
The main character, Claire, in The Listeners, she's super messy. Like there's just like so much happening with her. And yeah, as much as you want to like her and you want to root for her, you're also kind of like, what the hell are you doing? Like, get your act together. But then you're sympathetic. You're like, well, maybe I'm not fully understanding what she's going through. So she's an example of me liking that type of voice too.
I think one of the things that I'm like celebrating in my reading from this past year was my discovery of Curtis Sittenfeld, which I know I've talked about because we did do an episode on Prep, which is a book that is 25, almost 26 years old at this point. But she had a book that came out this year, a short story collection called Show Don't Tell. I feel like she does a messy kind of middle-class white woman character very well. And those do tend to be the characters that she writes about. So
listen to us. We're like really relatable, middle-class, messy women, just so relatable. I can't remember if I saw this on your list for 2025, but did you read The Endling? Or I think, sorry, it's just called Endling by Reva.
No.
I just started it today as an audiobook, and it's set in Ukraine, and she's right off the hop showing to be a pretty messy character in a very complex kind of context, I guess. So yeah, maybe that's one we can both read in the next little while, because I feel like we both like
Endlings, you said.
Endling. I saw it first because Tom was reading it. We have like a shared Audible, like whatever he downloads, I'll see come up in my app as well. And then after he read it and was like, I think you would like this, it started to show up everywhere, like in my Instagram feed and stuff. And again, because I'm such a sucker for that stuff, I'm like, well, if other people like it, it's one thing if Tom likes it, but he reads everything. I need to know what the other people are reading. That's what I'm going to go after. So it is, I think it is popular in that way. Okay, so you had a very prolific in terms of reading year. You sent me your totals today. I was so proud of you, but also put to shame.
It's okay.
Why don't you make the announcement here and now? How many books did you read this year, you crazy person?
So for 2025, I read 60 books, which
Solid.
For me, I know there are people out there like, tossing back 100 books in a year. That's not me. So 60 was an accomplishment. I mean, it's more than double, I think, what I read last year. It was a great year of reading, and I never really hit like a slump, which was really nice.
That is good.
Feel like I was able to kind of just glide through the year and just be consuming books and thinking about them and recommending them to people and talking about them with you. And so, that felt really great.
Would you be able to isolate like a top 3 or a top 5 of those 60?
In terms of like must reads, I think because I had 60, like I certainly had a few more must reads than I normally would. I mean, I started with Our Evenings, which was Alan Hollinghurst, which I still stick by that. I thought it was a beautifully written book, and I thought it was a very affecting book. And I think the kind of culture and climate that we're in right now, I think those books are really important to read and think about. Also, the 2 short story collections I read by Curtis Sittenfeld, again, Show Don't Tell was like one of my favorite reads of the whole year. I love the short stories in that book. And I haven't traditionally been like a huge short story person, but I just really, really love that collection. And I didn't feel like there was a bad story in the bunch. Yep. As part of our summer reading challenge, I talked about this a little bit. I read Colson Whitehead's The Nickel Boys, and that was just an absolutely beautiful, devastating book. And I wept at the end of it.
It's funny because when I was saying earlier, like about favorite books, and if someone says, what's your favorite book? And sometimes you can't really pick a particular book. But I always say, if someone says, what's your favorite book? I either say Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead or The Boat People by Sharon Bala. But if I think about the Nickel Boys in particular, all of the things that I said, relatable character, Instagrammable cover, none of those things are true in terms of like the Nickel Boys. And yet that book was so powerful, has stayed with me. I recommend it all the time. Loved it. Like you said, so emotionally affecting. But yeah, it doesn't tick any of the boxes that I just listed. So let this be a lesson, I think, that the power of literature, there's no formula. There's no formula in terms of what you will like. And the whole beauty of it is always getting something different and getting something different out of it.
you can become a better person by the kinds of books that you read and the kinds of perspectives that you kind of expose yourself to through reading, because there's something just so intimate and something so powerful about that intimacy. And then connected to the Nickel Boys, I had read back to back. I read that one and I had read Chinging Allstars by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah. And that was another super powerful, uncomfortable read, but everything that was put into that story made it a true must read. And then like there's like a trio of books. They're not related, but they're related. If I'm thinking about my entire list of books, this seems to be like a little bit of a through line for me for this year. I had a book called Girl on Girl, subtitled How Pop Culture Turned a Generation of Women Against Themselves by Sophie Gilbert. I also read Nobody's Girl, which is a memoir of surviving abuse and fighting for justice by Virginia Roberts Giuffre. And then the book Breasts, which was a very short story, A Relative Brief Relationship by Jean Hannah Edelstein. And although they're not related, I feel like they capture what it is to be a woman and some unfortunate and sometimes inevitable things that women have to go through in the way that we can be objectified and we can be victims and we can be blamed for our sexuality, and they're connected to one another. Like there's something in there that, like, when I was reading one, I was also then thinking about the other, or even though they were all completely different books. One is really about pop culture and like especially 90s and like early aughts television, film, music. Another one was an actual memoir about someone who survived, although unfortunately is no longer living, survived some horrific abuse that's very well publicized at this point. We're all talking about it now with like Jeffrey Epstein. And then the other is a memoir about a woman and her relationship with her breasts from adolescence all the way through a breast cancer journey. But there is a conversation that's being held. And I feel like that was something that I picked up on in a lot of the books that I ended up reading. This kind of thought experiment of what it is to be a woman, what it is to be a woman in this time, and how we're still, kind of negotiating where we stand and the kind of power that we can hold. And
when I think about the conversations we've had in terms of just episodes, when we've really gotten into like the thick of things, Bright Young Women totally deals with that. Outlawed.
Yes.
Looking back, another book I think a should read, but that I think about often. I think I cut that one a little short back at that time. But The Guest, another book about people using their bodies in ways that can benefit them, but also that they struggle with the ethics around or the principle of that use of their body, I guess.
Turning your body into a commodity.
Yeah.
Because it's the only attempt at power that you maybe have access to.
Obviously, there's a lot of books that I think you and I have read over the last few years that deal with that. And it is interesting because Bright Young Women was set in like the 70s. We just keep having these same conversations on repeat in all these different contexts and all these different eras. It's kind of discouraging.
Well, and in a funny way, and kind of humor me for a moment, but one of the books I read toward the end of the year, and I didn't read, it was an audiobook, was Cher's memoir. And it was part one of her memoir, which, I mean, again, totally speaks to my love of pop culture, my fascination with like music and like the music industry. But I feel like that book actually sums up everything that we're talking about, because she is someone who, she had her first brush with stardom and her first hit in the 1960s. And she has been part of pop culture and our general kind of zeitgeist from then. I mean, there's like a joke that like, we go through like a nuclear war, it'll be nothing left but like cockroaches and Cher, because she's like the ultimate survivor. Like she's come back so many times. But the one thing that really surprised me about her book, because, I was expecting like, the inside story about like the Sonny and Cher show. But really, it was a story about what it meant to be a woman. Like we think now about some of the rights that we at one point maybe took for granted that we have had. The right to make and own our own money, for example. The right to have control over what happens with our bodies. And, when she was originally becoming famous, like, she couldn't have her own bank account. And in fact, one of the things I learned in that book was how her husband, Sonny Bono, had made it so that she was an employee of her own corporation. He had all the rights and access to all of the money that she was making, and she had no access to it whatsoever. So she's someone that had to struggle to be able to have, the right to her own money that she earned from her own creative projects. And, you zoom all the way to now, and we're also now like having some of those rights being taken away. And there's like lots of questions about like, oh, should women be working? Should they be women just mothers? And like, that was one thing that struck me. And it was something that I like consumed toward the end of the year. And I was like, oh, wow, like that kind of sums up too, like how narrow that window has been in our lifetimes of women actually having independence and autonomy and rights, and how that is something that we can't take for granted because it can go away. And we still have to struggle against people in power, men in particular, who take advantage of or decide what's right for us and what's wrong for us.
I can't help but think too, even about Britney Spears.
Oh my God.
Who, definitely an icon of pop culture and pop music, but of a whole point in time, really. Like she's reflective of a moment. But the whole conflict that she had with, wasn't it her father who like held all of the rights to her music and her output as well, that she had to take him to court and everything?
Oh yeah. I mean, basically she had all of her rights stripped of her. She was completely under the control of her father. She was under something that usually happens to people who are like elderly and infirm and who are like maybe suffering from dementia because they can't make legal or financial decisions for themselves. She, at age, I don't even know, like under 30, like probably like 27, had that placed on her, and only recently, like in the last couple of years, was able to regain access to her own money and to make her own legal and financial decisions. She was essentially like relegated to being a ward.
I know we started talking about this tangentially, but sometimes I think about how I might listen to a song, I might buy a product, I might use a service, and I'm really not thinking about the deeper implications of that. And I think about myself as like a teenager in the early aughties, loving Britney Spears, dancing to her music, buying her albums, trying to dress like her, look like her, seem like her, and all those things. And looking back on it now as an adult, just realizing like we were being manipulated.
Yeah.
We were perfect candidates for these companies to just say, oh, we know what you want. And actually we don't, but we're going to tell you what you want. We're going to totally construct all of the things that you like and feel like you need and what you should be. And then you'll give us money for that. And we just bought into the whole thing.
Yeah. The way that we are manipulated as consumers, ways that we don't even realize, but it's happening all the time. Like if you're on social media at all, guaranteed. Like you said, you want an Instagrammable cover.
Oh, 100%. And so this is a nice tie-in here for me because as you may recall, and I know you do, 2025, my whole thing was that I wasn't going to spend money on books. And basically, spoiler alert, the thing I'm going to do in 2026, I'm going to spend a shit ton of money on books because do you know what? I really feel like I missed out on so much. I was like depriving myself of things that I wanted to read. And that was not a good feeling. And a perfect example of this was you were talking about Curtis Sittenfeld's book, Show Don't Tell. And I remember when that came out at the beginning of the year, you were salivating over this book. You would be like sending me screenshots of pages. And I was like, I'm on a budget this year, Sarah. What did I say? $400 or something. I was going to keep it under.
I thought it was 500, but
could be 500. And maybe I restrained myself too much. I don't know. But that was a book that I went to the bookstore. I had it in my hand. I was like, no, this is a $45 book. Like, and at that point it was early in the year. So I didn't end up getting it. There was always a wait list for the library copy of it, like probably one copy to service this entire province. So I never read that book. And here it is, one of these like very seminal pieces that you read this year. And I did not read it. I definitely kept it under $400. I'm going to very quickly just do the math because I have been keeping track. So I did restrain myself too much. It turns out I was in the range of like $200, which wow. I really could have gone more. But I also, I have a bit of an addictive personality that I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to contract, I'm going to super contract, like I didn't want to come in right on budget. Even just now you said 500. I was like, I think it was 400, but I was really under 200. I really held back way too much. But when I look back at the list of books that I read, I don't know, like I did not have very many must reads this year. Yeah. And there's not a ton of books that had that propulsive kind of quality because I felt like I was kind of denying myself things that I was really interested in. And at that point, I kind of say like, well, why bother? Like, what is the point of it all if I'm just going to be trying to like adhere to some kind of goal that I set rather than just pursuing what I'm drawn to? So in terms of the success of my 2025 reading goal of trying to like stay on a budget, I was successful, but I wouldn't do it again. I even wouldn't really recommend it.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think where you're located also makes it a little bit harder just because, like you said, like there might be like one Curtis Sittenfeld like copy of Show Don't Tell, like in the entire province. I certainly have had a lot of really good luck at my local libraries of being able to pick up titles. And some of it was like accidental. Like I just happened to walk in and it was right there for me to look at and see on the shelf. And maybe I saw something about it or read something about it. And I'm like, oh, it's right there. I should just get it. And I did. And more often than not, they ended up being at least should reads, like decent books. So it's worth it sometimes to spend those extra dollars on something that's good.
And it wasn't a completely lost year. Like if I look back, I did have some must reads. I would say Fight Night by Miriam Tays was definitely a must read. It basically was like a granddaughter and her grandmother, and they were taking a trip together. But it's not even so much what I got out of that book from like an educational perspective. It was just the voices and the characters in that book were so much fun. So like that one was a must read, and it was like on a sale rack, $8 at Chapters or something, like totally worthwhile. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, that was a fully purchased book. I got a soft cover, so it was like less than $30, but that was a must. And it's funny because we talked about short stories. I feel like 2025 was like the year of the short story because I read several collections that really like kind of scratched an itch for me. One of which was called New Teeth by Simon Rich. I did that one as an audiobook. That was so good. You would love that. Laugh out loud. Exactly the type of humor that you and I both love. So that was a good one. And although this was a short, sort of, I guess it was like a novella, George Saunders wrote Fox 8, which I put as a must read this year. But I read a couple of his short story collections this year and really liked them. 10th of December was the collection of short stories. I didn't give it like a must, but it was really like entertaining to listen to. And the only other must read I have from 2025 was Barney's version. I mean, it's from like the 90s. It's definitely like a Canadian classic, like a Montreal author, won the Giller back in the 90s. It's just a really good book. Like there's just no other way of putting it. It's just like very well told story. It feels like a feather in the cap to be like, oh, I read and understood.
Yeah.
Barney's version by Mordecai Richler. Well done, me. Sign me up for the Order of Canada.
I feel like you had like a little bit of like a breakthrough with audiobooks in general. I feel like because of your kind of forced travel across the province so frequently this year, I think the way that you were able to kind of utilize that time and interact with audiobooks, I think was really good for you. And I mean, one of the things that you talked about on the episode that we did for the listeners was how you kind of hit a sweet spot of being able to read and listen at the same time, and how that like really enriched the experience for you. And so I think those little things are totally worth celebrating too, like discovering new kind of methods or habits that change your experience, or like I said, enhance your experience in some way. That's great. And to be able to be, you know, at this stage in the game of our reading lives, and to be still encountering new things and new feelings is a really great thing.
That's so true. This is a really brief point, but if I were to try to articulate what my goal for 2026 is, I would say it's going to be leaning into the audiobook more. Like when I just think ahead to what I know is coming up in terms of family commitments and life and work and everything, I know I'm going to have a really busy year, but I also know that I am happier when I'm reading. I am just a better, more content, more satisfied person when there's stories in my life, when I'm engaged in these fictitious worlds. So it's not something that I want to like put on the back burner because I'm busy or I'm occupied with other things. So my goal for 2026 is to, even if it's just maintaining the volume of reading I've done, or even if it dips a little bit, I'm not too worried about that. But just sort of recognizing that if I want to continue being engaged in listening to stories and consuming stories, it's going to have to be through audiobooks while I'm kind of multitasking, and to just embrace that and just go full throttle into it in the coming year. So that would be my goal for 2026. What about you? Reading goal for 2026. What is it?
Last year, I set a number of like 35 books, which I certainly more than, you know, met and ended up beating that number by quite a lot. Going back to this new Kindle that I have in my hand right now, and because it is, you know, part of Amazon, which, you know, I have some kind of questions about how I feel morally about how much I use Amazon and how I interact with Amazon. My thought is maybe not necessarily for every story that I read through my Kindle, but I certainly am going to make it a point, if I am getting a physical copy of a book, that I'm getting it from a smaller, hopefully independently run bookstore or used bookstore, that I'm continuing to utilize the resource of my local libraries, and that I'm really kind of paying attention to where my dollars are being spent. Like really, I have a Kindle Unlimited account now, or like subscription essentially, that I think is like, I don't know, $9.99 a month or something. So I need to be spending at least $9.99 a month, if not quite a bit more, on an actual physical book that is not coming from Amazon or any like huge, even like a Barnes and Noble, you know, Kohl's or whatever. I think just really just being conscious of that this year, and, you know, continuing to read books that make me think, continuing to read books that make me want to share with others in that big and small conversation that we get to have about books. And and to continue this could read, should read, must read project that you and I have going on.
Well, with that in mind, what would you say is your most anticipated read of 2026? And it can be a book that you have and want to read, or a book that is coming out in 2026 that you've heard about, you're interested in. Is there one book in particular that you're really itching to get your hands on? And, you know, maybe we'll both read it.
Yeah, definitely. So there is a book that I know that you got for Christmas, which is Pick a Color.
Yes. Pick a Color by Zevin and Vangsa.
That is one that I really do want to read sooner rather than later. And I know that that is the book that you have in your hands. So I think that could make for a really good conversation. I think I do want to make sure that I'm reading more Canadian authors and Atlantic Canadian authors. So any recommendations, I certainly know who to go to.
Yeah. The book that I'm probably looking forward to the most in 2026 is not even out yet, but it is one that you recommended to me.
Ooh.
And since you recommended it, a couple of other people have mentioned it, and I've started to encounter it elsewhere. And I do think it actually aligns very well with the theme of female autonomy and women's rights. And that book is Half His Age by Jeanette McCurdy.
Oh my God, that's so funny, Melissa, because that is I thought I had it on my actual list that's in front of me of like the want to read books, my TBRs, and I couldn't find it. But I really want to read that book. And the audiobook that I am listening to right now that has been interrupted because I ran out of time is her memoir, which is I'm Glad My Mom Died. So I'm really looking forward to finishing that and then reading Half His Age. So that's so look how aligned we are, Melissa.
I think it comes out in February, if I'm not mistaken. Now we may have different release dates. It may be coming out in the US at a different time, but it's not out now, but it's definitely like very high on my TBR. So maybe we could pick a color first and then move into the Jeanette McCurdy. The other one I can't wait to read, Madeleine Gray has another book. It's out already in Australia and I'm sure other markets as well. Markets, listen to me. Countries, places where people live and read, but also her new book, Chosen Family.
Excellent. I smell maybe a book banter episode, kind of percolating for, the spring months.
I like it. Well, this is great. Thank you so much. As always, I cannot say enough about how much these conversations mean to me, how much they fill my heart and my cup with joy and warmth. 2025 has been yet another glorious year of reading and sharing in this with you. Thank you. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and God bless.
And same to you. It truly, truly is a gift that keeps on giving, and it's a lifeline, these conversations. Love you.
Love you too.